Well, the trolley came to Cambridge Springs. They had a dream of having a trolley here in the late 19th century and make kind of arrangements. And the first one came to Cambridge in October 19th, 1900. And the original building that was here at that time was probably, it was already in existence when they took it over. And it was probably a horse barn or something like that. And they ran it for about 10 years. Decided it wasn't adequate. The owners wanted something much better, so they tore it down and they built this. And this is pretty much the way it looked when it was dedicated November 29th, 1910. We have a picture of Dedication Day on the wall here you can look at later here. And it ran from, this was operational as a trolley station from October 29th, 1910 until September 30th, 1928 when they closed. And the demise of the trolley was the buses. And the original owners just never, they would never accept the fact that possibly they would be replaced by the buses. They just couldn't accept the fact that the gasoline engine would ever be that reliable for people to depend on it.
What made the buses viable was the paving of Route 19 from Meadville to Erie, which took place in 1923. Everything else up till then had been dirt roads. And once it was paved, once 19 was paved, then the buses kind of had a clear shot. And they were much more economical to operate than the trolley system.
Yeah, this was taken, the trolley ran from here to Erie, ran through Edinburgh, ran into Erie. And you could cross the tracks and get on another trolley that went from, which is owned by the Meadville Traction Company, different owners. You could go over there and there's a trolley station over there and you could get on that trolley and go to Meadville through Venango, Sagertown, out to the Fountain House and into Meadville on North Main Street. In 1914, the Northwestern Railway Company was formed. They purchased the Meadville Traction Company, so they owned them both at that time. But they were never able to cross the tracks. So you always had the problem where you had to go cross the tracks to get to the other station. One little side note we'd love to talk about. On October 26, 1912, William Howard Taft came to Meadville and visited Allegheny College, came up on the train, went over and dedicated Alliance College. And after about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, after the ceremonies, he came over here to the trolley station, got on the trolley, went to Edinburgh, and gave a speech at the Edinburgh Normal School at that time to young ladies, a speech that is very controversial today, but that's another story. And he came back here about 5 o'clock at the trolley station, went across the tracks, got on the train, and went back to the White House. So he was actually a sitting president when he came here.
In 1918, there was an advertisement for a round trip from Meadville to Erie, and the price was $1.76. That number doesn't mean a whole lot until you use the inflation calculator to see what it is in today's dollars. And in today's dollars, it would be about $30 and change. So the question is, was that a reasonable price to go from here up to, or Meadville up to Erie? And the answer is it depends on how quick you wanted to get up and back, because that was horse and buggy times, and a horse would go 20 miles in a day. So a round trip to Erie from Meadville would take at least 2, if not 3 days, versus the trolley, 2 hours.
Yeah. In 1917, they completed a spur that went straight from Venango, it went from Cyberlink Junction, which is the end of McClellan Road, and it would come out of Edinburgh on Plank Road and go straight into Venango and go straight into Meadville. So at that time, this became a spur. People of Cambridge Springs weren't too happy about it, but that's the way it was. And actually, the tracks across the street were taken up at that time.
The trolley was not just for passengers, but for freight as well. Farmers in the Edinburgh area would put their produce on freight cars hooked to trolley cars and bring it down here where it would connect with the Erie Railroad.
Yeah, an interesting thing, 100 years ago, like 1917, this was so popular. On the 4th of July weekend, they would bring interurban cars out of Erie, get a team of horses, tow them across the tracks, put them on the tracks going to Meadville. They'd take those interurbans to Meadville, and on the 4th of July weekend, it would take as many as 10,000 people a day back and forth to Conneaut Lake Park. It also went into Harmisburg. The Harmisburg Road went to Conneaut Lake Park, but also went to Lionsville, and it picked up passengers from the Pennsylvania Railroad there, Pennsylvania Lake Erie Railroad, pick them up, take them over to Conneaut Lake Park. That was a big business. A lot of people came up from, a whole lot of people came up from Pittsburgh to visit Conneaut Lake Park. That was in more Conneaut Lake's heyday. The trolley people were responsible for building Waldemere Park in Erie. So they'd have something at the end of the line for the use of the trolley. That was quite common. I think the same is true with Kennywood Park in Pittsburgh. It was common for trolley companies to build parks. There was Oakwood Park, which was more of a resort type thing. It didn't have rides, but it existed out Alden Street Extension. There's still remnants of it out there.
In 1923, Route 19 got paved from Meadville all the way to Erie, but even after it was paved, it was subject to flooding from the French Creek, from ice dams in French Creek. And the worst area was between Sagertown and Venango. And so what the trolley companies did was to put flat cars and loading sidings in Sagertown and in Venango. So for $5, you could put your Model T on a flat car and have the trolley pull it up to Venango where it would be offloaded. Again, $5 back then is more like $65 today.
Yeah. Concerning this station itself, this, like I said, it's built in 1910. It's a wonderful structure. I don't think it's settled a quarter of an inch. It's as strong today as it was then, which was, and another thing, when the gas station people, service station people took it over in 1929, it had like 4 or 5 different owners in that time, but it ran consistently from 1929 to 1964. One of the nice things, though, they use it as a service station, they never put in partitions or destroyed. You can look at the restrooms. They still have the original signs on them, the original brass signs that are on them, which we found. Like I said, they used it for a service station. The front portal was a lot lower at that time, and they took that off and they put the one on that you see now. They took the original pillars out and put a stamp. But the reason for that was so they could put their gas pumps in there and get larger vehicles underneath this portal. We reestablished the original pillars that are out here a year ago, and when we dug down, we found the original foundation where those things sat. So they're exactly where they were back then.
One of our board members, Rod Frazier, has involved young people from the Crawford County Career and Technical Center, specifically electrician students, and they've been up here for how many years, Dan?
They've been up here since 2010.
And it has been so exciting to watch them get hooked on the project, to take ownership. This is now one of the things in the community that they've had a hand in. It's their station.
Yeah, one of the nice things we found out is a lot of seniors do projects, and it required like 10 hours or something like that. These young adults come here, they get involved, and they as Ed said, they form an allegiance to the place. I've had students that worked in 2010 that come back here just to visit, to see how we're doing. but I think it gives them a life. You know, they can tell their children that they were a part of all of this. They put in they actually completely rewired this facility. They put in a 220 feeding into a 110 downstairs. We put in a brand new furnace. We put in air conditioning, completely insulated it. So it's a wonderful structure today. I think. Well, go ahead, Dave.
What was the adjective the electrical inspector used to describe their work?
He said, I'm trying to think what he said, but he said, this is excellent. Yeah, he would, when the inspector came here, he was quite amazed at how perfect it was. But you have to know Rod Frazier. These lights up here, the upper lights, they were in the walls as they are, but we had to move them away from the walls. That's why you have the cap up there. But they, because by code today, they have to have a box behind every one of them, electrical box behind each one of them. And they would run the conduit from one box to the other. And they would bend the conduit to make it run against the wall, then come out to the conduit. And I said to Rod, I said, Rod, you can just run that conduit straight. I said, it doesn't need to be bent. He says, no, these kids have to learn that you have to do things. There's a right way and a wrong way to do things. There was little things like that when, as I was with him, he would impress on his students. When we came here in 2009, it was plaster hanging off the walls. There were holes in the ceiling. There was old electrical work hanging all over the place. The floor was pretty much the way it is now, but it was much dirtier and had problems with it. And everything that was painted completely gray from the gas station days. We came in and stripped the walls. You can see we redid all the walls, put the cap on, did the electric. When you look we sealed all these windows were actually are not the original windows. They're duplicates of what the original windows were absolutely gone. Some of them had BB holes in them. They were broken and so forth. We made new windows. The ladies' room and the men's room were both pretty well trashed. We went in there and completely tore everything off the walls in there and replaced it. We knew from the original paper when they dedicated it that they had 4-inch white tile on the ceiling or on the walls in the restroom. We put the 4-inch white tile back the way it was. This was here, this partition. I'm not sure why, but we probably should have taken it out, but it was there then. We didn't want to take it out. The sink is original. We put a false ceiling in it to match the ceiling in the main room. And the men's room is pretty much the same idea. These brass plates were here originally. These I thought they were painted solid gray. I took them off and I took them down to U.S. bronze and stripped them down. I was hoping to use them for a pattern to make brass plates because I thought they were made out of pot metal. And pot metal in those days was just cheap iron that flak type people used who didn't have any engineering ability, but and that's what I thought they were. And I stripped them down and found out they were actually brass. There's this one, the other one says GENT'S toilet in the men's room, and the one over the ticket window is also the same thing. They all survived, which just amazed me, the number of people that were through here, the number of owners and so forth, that these were left in place. Hard to believe. This was a dispatch office, and this is where we know that they had Dutch doors here at that time, so we reestablished those. In fact, we even found 4 hinge marks where they hung at. So that was nice. This is the ticket window. I have a picture of the ticket office then, and I was able to scale it based on it. I know it's 28 inches across, so based on that I was able to scale that to make it exactly the same way it was. This ticket door slides up and down, not a problem. This bench is identical to the way it was in the picture. We got a picture of, this shelf is exactly the same way it was in 1910. We have a picture of that. Over here, this is the original desk where he sat, the dispatcher. And he could look up the road and see the trolley coming, and he would ring the bell and let the people know, alert them that the trolley was on its way. This is the original electrical box. which the career technical electric students were always fascinated by. Kind of fascinated myself. These are the original breakers they had, which by 1910 is kind of state of the art. The fuses, I left these fuses the way I found them. They had wires wrapped around them because I think they were tired of blowing fuses, so they'd wrap wires around them. It should have been more like this type of thing. But that way they wouldn't blow the fuse. So wonder they didn't burn the place down, but it wasn't for the lack of effort. This is the original shelf here. And we're kind of proud of the dispatch office. This back room here is pretty much the way it was in 1910. The garage, when the service station people came here, they used this, number one, they used over here, they had for lubing cars, they had a hydraulic lift over here. That was taken out before we got a hold of it. On the left side here was a car wash. They took, and if you look up here, you can see that they put a 2-foot addition on it in 1932, we found out, to put the garage doors in. We do not have an existing picture of what the north side of this building looked like, which is this side where the garage doors are. We do not know what was here before. We suspect there was a freight door, very similar to the one back here, that came in from the north end. They would bring freight in here. And the railroad station sat right about 100 feet away. And they would bring freight in here, and the door is 48 inches wide, so to facilitate that. All the area, the tracks was all planked, so they could push carts and take freight over to there very easily.
This wonderful trolley station opened in 1910, and this provided Cambridge Springs a link south to Meadville, north to Erie, and Erie was an interurban rail hub. Basically, you could go to Buffalo by trolley, you could go to Cleveland by trolley. You could actually go a distance of 1,087 miles by trolley from Oneonta, that's a city in eastern New York, via Buffalo, Erie, Cleveland, Chicago, Milwaukee, up to Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, a distance of 1,087 miles. It would take 20 different transfers. But the bottom line is the trolley provided intermediate local service, connecting with the rail lines. Cambridge Springs was very fortunate to have not only the trolley link, but with the Erie Railroad. The Erie Railroad gave it a link to the National Rail Network. You could go east to New York City, west to Chicago, west to Cleveland. So Cambridge Springs was very special. But by 1928, this trolley line was abandoned. It was replaced by buses. And for a while, bus service kept in place. But by World War II, bus service had disappeared from this region. And much of the inner city bus service in this region has disappeared. Trolleys last operated in Erie County, in the city of Erie, on May 12, 1935. And during the 30s, it was a very difficult time for the streetcar industry in the United States. The Depression, more people buying automobiles, more trolley lines were disappearing. By 1970, there were only 7 streetcar systems left in the United States. But the Arab oil embargo of 1973 dramatically changed things. Our government sent experts to Western Europe, and they were amazed to find that, remember, we rebuilt Western Europe after the war, but they found modern streetcar systems, trolley car systems. They came back all excited but nervous. What to call this? They coined an expression, light rail transit. A new era began. From 7 streetcar systems, we now have 34. The 34th opened in Detroit, Michigan on May 12th. There are more on the way. The people in Cambridge Springs are very fortunate to have this trolley station. This is the only restored trolley station in the tri-state area of southwestern New York, northwestern Pennsylvania, northeastern Ohio. Nobody else has anything quite like it. So the people who've been involved with this have done an absolutely tremendous job of restoring the station. And this is not only an important symbol of history, but it also serves as a future gateway. That Erie Railroad line, which is now operated by the Western New York and Pennsylvania Railroad, doesn't see a lot of traffic today. Over the next 30 years, the United States population is going to increase by 100 million people. The demand for the movement of goods and services will double. Those communities like Cambridge Springs with a rail line in it are going to receive a lot of benefits because you can't double the size of the interstate highway system. Rail lines are going to play an ever more important role. And when we remember our heritage, we'll have a better future worth remembering. So the bottom line is, people in Cambridge Springs can be very proud of this trolley station. Buffalo doesn't have one like this, Cleveland doesn't have one like this, Erie doesn't have one like this. Cambridge Springs has a very special station with a lot of work and a lot of effort. I hope this community realizes the importance of this, and I hope people of all walks of life appreciate it and help it move along, because this is tomorrow's future gateway for Cambridge Springs.
The trolley station will be open to the public every Saturday from 1 o'clock until 4 p.m. and by appointment. We have from the beginning considered this to be the community's piece of property, even though we hold the title to it. And so it's available to the community for meetings, for birthday parties, and for other events where they want to use it, including weddings and what have you.
Well, as you can see, we completely landscaped it. We took up, we put new concrete in. We put it in almost exactly the way it was previously. We dug up, we jackhammered up over 100,000 pounds of old concrete. The front patio, we thought we were taking up the patio, and we found out there was another one underneath it. So it was a real bear. We had to bring in two triaxles filled it just to do that. We found the original foundations under the pillars. So we used it. We covered. They were down about 1.5 feet. So I don't know how deep they go, but with the way they built this place, I suspect at least 4 feet. And we built the deck. If you look at it, the patio is actually separate from those, so that in the wintertime the deck pushes up and out of the pillars.
How many tanks came out?
We took out. First thing we did in 2010, late 2009, 2010. We took a geological study of the ground here, and we had Dave Schaefer come in, and he did all the research, the Sanford maps and so forth, and found out we had buried tanks here. We took out 9 tanks, gas tanks. Worked with the DEP, spent a good amount of money on it, and refilled it. And we actually got a resident clean letter from the DEP. One of the nice things we found out, that down about 12 feet you got blue gumbo clay, so that probably saved us from that standpoint. One of the interesting things, we had a backhoe in and we're digging. We were digging over by the pumps, and down about 4 inches and sparks started flying, and we came flying in there, and we pulled the old breaker, and found out that the Atlantic Richfield had taken out the pumps in 1964, never disabled the wires, so they were buried about 4 inches below the ground all those years. Most of the time that electric wasn't on, but really from 1993 until 2010, when we found it, that electric was actually active.
We are extremely proud of the finished product, and one of the good things about this project, like all civic projects, is you make some wonderful friendships during the course of what you're doing, and we have realized that too, that we're all just kind of a family now concerning this project.
Yeah, I'll go along with that. Ed's been the leading force, steady, never wavers. Marianne Martin's been tremendous in getting us grants for some of the bigger projects, like the cement work and so forth, putting the new pillars on. Sandy Porter's been great, and he does a lot of research and digs up everything. I think Sandy would knock on somebody's door at 2 o'clock in the morning if you thought on the other side of the door they had something that would be of interest to us. No inhibitions about that. I spent a lot of time here myself, doing a lot of the labor work, all the plumbing, had to replumb it and all that. So yeah, it's been a great experience. I think I can tell you that I think the people, from everything we tell, the people of Cambridge Springs are very pleased. They're happy. I think the community is happy, and I can tell you I'm ecstatic. So it's a win-win-win situation for us.